Andrew here, and your job is killing you. No, seriously, it very well may be. A couple of times I've teased the story of how I got healthier during the pandemic, and I got healthier in a very specific way. 2 years ago, right about now, early December of 2019, I had my annual physical. And in said annual physical, the doctor, of course, took my blood pressure and looked at the numbers and said, Andrew, you got your numbers are a little elevated. You got a little bit of hypertension. And I said, I've always had a little bit of hypertension. And discussed with my doctor the fact that, when I graduated university back in the early 90s, I remember my first physical upon graduation, my doctor, back then, different doctor, telling me, well, your blood pressure's up a few millimeters of mercury, but I wouldn't worry about it because you have a very slow heart rate. You've exercised it down very low. Well, I asked the new doctor, what's my heart rate? Oh, it's pretty low. Yeah. And so, you have your heart beats less often. It's got to push a little bit harder each time. If your heart rate's 75, it has to beat a certain amount. If your heart rate's 60, it's beating fewer times. So to push the same amount of blood, it's got to push a little harder each time. So I wasn't all that concerned. I've had this problem all my adult life, 30 years. Met the doctor. No, Andrew. We're a little worried. We think you should come in for a blood pressure true. A blood pressure true, they stick the sphygmomanometer on your arm, and you sit in a quiet room, in a darkened, quiet room. And if you recall, I like the dark and the quiet, so this is good. It's calming. It's soothing. And it takes multiple blood pressure readings over an extended period of time. After the readings were done, went into the exam room, and the doctor said, yes, your heart rate's a little bit elevated. We're a little concerned. And I said, what was my resting heart rate? 59. Yeah, my resting heart rate's a little bit, is slow. My blood pressure's a little elevated. Oh, no, we're a little bit worried. We want to do a 6-month follow-up. Now, the first blood pressure true was in January of 2020. What was 6 months after 2020? June 2020. What occurred in March of 2020? The world went sideways. Work closed. They said, Andrew, sign out a laptop, go home, work. Work from home. And I did. And right around that time, the school said, Andrew, here are your 3 children. You will have to set up workstations for them, and they'll be learning remotely on the computer at home. And we've got financial crisis, health crisis, we're isolated, locked down, nobody can go out and do anything, and so on and so on. Well, by June of that year, the doctors weren't taking in-person visits. You could do telehealth, but you couldn't do an in-person visit. So I didn't get my follow-up right away. It actually went till August before I got my follow-up blood pressure true. And what happened that summer? My parents sold their cottage. Now, the cottage was built by my grandfather during the war, 1943, I believe. So been in the family for a long, long time. It's a place of quiet and peace and beauty on the lake. My children absolutely love the place. I have loved the place for my entire my entire life, including my adult life. It's where I used to go to get away from people, where I could go and quietly contemplate the wind and the waves and the breeze and go fishing and so on. This was going to be taken from my life, and we had to stage it, and knowing it was the end, every weekend we were up, there was a lot of work. And knowing it was the end, we had to go up as much as we could because my boys absolutely loved being there. And so I went up as much as I could. So I was stressing about that, stressing about the loss of the cottage. I was working from home. I was overseeing my children's education. I was alone in the house, and the vast majority of my human contact was my wife and kids. Okay. Things started to creep open just a little bit. They eased open just a little bit. And I got my follow-up physical to have my second blood pressure true. I went in and I sat in the quiet, dark room, and they put the meter on the cuff on my arm, and they took my pressure. They took the measurements. I went back into the exam room. The doctor looked at it and said, everything's normal. You're fine. Go home. Not going to work dropped my blood pressure from, Andrew, we're worried about your long-term health, to everything's fine, go home. It went from, we may have to put you on prescription meds, to everything's fine, go home. My job was the only thing. Going to work, working in the engineering cubicle farm, Delbert Land, was the only change. I stopped doing that. Everything else, all of the additional stresses, were less than the reduction of stress from driving on the 401 to go work for 9 hours a day in the engineering cubicle farm. Your job is killing you.